Welcome back to our webinar. The next topic we're going to cover is cybersecurity, and we have an expert with us today, David McCullough. David is the Chief Technology Officer with LandrumHR and has extensive experience in the area of cybersecurity. So David, tell us a little bit about your experience in cybersecurity.
I've been in the technology space for over 20 years, serving in both operational and technical functions and responsible for day-to-day management of technology inside of both IT, software, and HR firms.
Well, technology can feel, particularly cybersecurity, can feel like a daunting task for a smaller employer. Target and Equifax were in the news this year, and they're huge employers. So what can a smaller employer do to protect themselves in the area of cybersecurity?
I think it's easy for a small to mid-sized company to think, well, this doesn't really apply to me. You see Equifax that had exposed over 140 million personal records last year. You had Target as well. Home Depot in 2016 had an issue. And so it's easy for a company, a small business, to sit back and say, it doesn't apply to me. But I think what people need to realize is that if you have personally identifiable information on your customers or your employees, you're at risk because you're a target. The U.S. economy is run on small to mid-sized businesses. The #1 employers in the U.S. are small to mid-sized businesses. So they house the information, oftentimes unknowingly expose the information that's most valuable to these that want to come after it.
So when you say personal identifying information, I know there's also personal health information, PII and PHI. What kind of information is that?
Anything that could identify you to someone that doesn't know you. Name, address, phone number, social security number, any health information, any your health background is very, very valuable. I think if you look at, if the small to mid-sized business looks at it and says, I have information that could, if exposed, cause harm to my business or to my employees or customers, then they ought to be taking cybersecurity seriously.
So I'm thinking that would include credit card numbers, socials, dates of birth, addresses, garnishment information. What are the kind of things that might not an employer think about that would be valuable to somebody who's dishonest? So
I think that employers will think about, I don't have anyone's credit card information, so that doesn't apply to me. But let's just think about simply the name, address, and email of all of your employees. That information is sold on the open market if it's exposed. So everybody's gotten an email, right, that they didn't sign up for or didn't know where it came from. That information might have been exposed and then sold on the open market. Let's also think about these folks that are looking for this information to use it in a nefarious way. They need a way to get to you in order for you to click on a link that they want to get inside your network. The way they do that is simply buy your information on the web, your name and your email address.
Right.
And then they can build these emails that we see that look like they came from inside your organization or from a customer, have a link in it that then exposes your network, and then they're in. Once they're in, they're in.
So we talked about internal versus external problems when we were preparing for this. And at the time, I didn't understand the distinction. Can you tell us the distinction between those two and how those two interplay as well? Sure.
So if you think internally, you think about your internal networks and you think about what you can do, even as a small to mid-sized business, to plug the holes that you might have in your infrastructure. So there's hardware solutions that you can employ. There's software solutions, for instance, Symantec, Norton are names that most people know that can help you plug these holes. But what I always like to tell people is there's another side to the issue, and that's the people side to the issue. Most of the time, these hackers are able to get inside your infrastructure just simply by an unwilling participant, your employee, letting them in. So we talked a minute ago about these emails that come in. These are very sophisticated outfits that are trying to get inside your network and steal information. So they will take an email that looks like it came from your customer, and they will change the URL or the address of the email to look like it came from your customer, even though it didn't. They'll know the name of your customer, and they'll use it to get one of your employees to click on a link in an email. Oh, I need some help with this report. Or, hey, can you help me understand this? And it's a link. Once they click that link and they're inside the network and you don't have a way to catch it, that's that internal and external combination of if you don't have the internal infrastructure and you're not working with your clients and your employees to fill those holes, then you're going to be exposed.
So you could have an internal employee who's very honest and doing their job and clicks on a link that they shouldn't. It's a completely inadvertent mistake, and that allows the external bad guy to enter your system.
That's exactly right. In a 2016 survey of companies that were exposed to cyber threats, they found that it took the attacker less than 4 minutes to get inside the network, and it took over 60 days for the customer, for the company, to find out that they were in.
Oh my gosh.
So once they're in, very quickly, they're inside your network, and oftentimes it's too late when you find out.
So one question from one of our viewers is right on point. How often should a company assess their risk?
So I think in an article that I wrote that's on the LandrumHR blog, I broke it down into 5 areas, what you should do in order to mitigate your risk. Really is assess, number one. Assess where you are today. Where are those holes? And you can, there's companies that will do that for you and help you do that. But after you assess, then you plan how to fill those holes, whether it's a hardware, software solution. It involves training for sure. So you assess, you plan, you test the plan that you put together, both internally, hardware solutions, and any training. Then you implement that plan. Train your staff, implement the solutions, and then finally, and this really goes to the heart of your question, you reassess, continually reassess. So at minimum, you should take a look at these types of things once a quarter, so 4 times a year. The more you find holes in your infrastructure, the more you increase that assessment. So you might do it once a month, but at minimum, once a quarter.
So David, if I'm an employee and I receive an email and it just doesn't feel right, it doesn't sound right, it doesn't sound like the sender, or they're asking for unusual information, how should I handle that?
Good question. I think it's important for employers to instill in their employees this don't be afraid to ask the question kind of environment. If you receive an email and it sounds a little bit suspicious, or your intuition says, I'm not really sure this is coming from my client, my vendor, our employee, pick up the phone, give them a call, and just validate that they sent the email, that it came from them. You'll quickly know whether or not this was valid. Some employers are concerned that may be too big of a red flag for their customer, that, oh, wait a minute, somebody's sending an email that looks like me. What we found is most customers, vendors are thankful that you made the call, that you picked up the phone, and you didn't do anything to expose their data to these cyber attackers.
I agree. I would want to know if somebody were doing that on my behalf, or appeared to be doing it for my behalf. But the rule of thumb is never, ever, ever click on the link. Never
click on any link in any email that's not from someone that you know.
So can you give us one key takeaway for protection of your business and cybersecurity and PHI and PII?
I think that most of the small to mid-sized businesses don't know today how exposed they are. They feel like because they've done 1 or 2 things that they are not exposed. They feel like because of the business they're in, they're not at risk.
Right.
The number one encouragement that I would give these employers is to just spend some time and assess your risk. Bring in a qualified IT professional to look at your risk, because the money that you spend there will more than pay for itself should you have a data breach. This is last year, $86 billion industry.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
That's a lot of money.
Ransomware alone Ransomware is where people think they're going to steal my employee data, but ransomware gets into your system. Attackers get into your network and then they lock your data down. So they don't steal anything, they just lock it down and put a code that you don't have, and then they send you an email and it says, for $2 million, we'll unlock your data and you can have your business back.
They're holding you hostage.
Exactly right. That in 2017, ransomware cost worldwide over $5 billion. So this is a real business. Treat cybersecurity and cyber attacks as a real business. There are people that make their living stealing data and writing programs to infiltrate networks. You need to take it seriously as a small business and spend the time, money, and effort to assess where your vulnerabilities are.
And it seems to me that if I'm a small business and I'm taking these proactive efforts and I'm investing in security, that's something I can turn around and use it as a marketing tool for my clients and my vendors so that they trust my business and they trust it when they give me their personal information.
Absolutely a differentiator oftentimes for businesses to say we take your information seriously and this is what we do to protect it. Absolutely can really separate you from others in your industry.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This is really helpful information. I appreciate you sharing it.
Thank you, Amy.